incredible panel here at Historic Kogawa House on epic poetry writing. My name is Johnny Dietrich. I am privileged to be the artistic director for Vancouver Poetry House and the interim executive director for Historic Kogawa House. And those are the two organizations that have put on Amplify, which is the very first seedling pilot of a spoken word intensive here at the house. Starting this program was always a joy because this space is a home for writers. It is a place of storytelling and it's a space of creation because those things are necessary for shaping the future, for healing the past. This house is located at 1450 West 64th Avenue in Vancouver, British Columbia. For those who don't know, please come check it out. This is the childhood home of Joe Kogawa, who is the author of Obasan, and that book and that story speaks a lot to and tells about the experience of Japanese interned Canadians and the histories there. And that book helped the federal government acknowledge and recognize finally that the internment was real and is happening, and the sad reality that it's happening now still in the world for many peoples. This house is also the home of, was a home of her father, Gordon Goichi Nakayama, who was a previous member of the Anglican clergy who confessed on his deathbed of causing a lot of harm to community and to youth. And so there's been a lot of healing that's had to happen. We take that healing and reconciliation into how we move through this home, and we also recognize that that same healing is parallel to and in concert with the need to decolonize practice. And we want to recognize that we are on the traditional, ancestral, unceded lands of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations here in what's known as Vancouver. And we move with that spirit of goodness to, fill this home with good stories and transforming the future. So thanks for that, and thanks for the introduction from me. But enough about me and the space. You can come and check those things out. Right now, we are having an amazing panel on writing epic poetry with Sheri-D Wilson and Renée Sarojini Saklikar. I'm going to take a quick moment to introduce our lovely folks to my left here. Sheri-D Wilson is an award-winning performer and author of 14 books, 4 short films, 3 plays, and 4 poetry and music albums. 15 books now. Her work has received many awards and honors, including the Order of Canada. As an honorary Doctor of Letters, honoris causa from Kwantlen University, Poet Laureate Emeritus of Calgary, the Stephen G. Stephenson Award for Poetry, and the Women of Vision Award. A strong advocate for social change and community building, in 2003 she founded the Calgary Spoken Word Society and remains the artistic director today. For 11 years, the Society produced a large spoken word festival and psychic program. In 2005, Sheri-D founded the Spoken Word program at the Banff Center and was director and head faculty until 2012. Sheri-D splits her time between Calgary and Vancouver with her dog Willow, where she's as busy as the water table controlling emblem of Canada. Wow, that's awesome. All right, and then we've got lovely Renée Sarojini Saklikar. I always feel the need to read these bios because you need to know. You need to know out there the amazing things that come from writers that are our heroes and our mentors. Renée Sarojini Saklikar is an award-winning author of 5 books, including Children of Air, India, and Listening to the Bees. Her work spans poetry, essays, and short fiction, appearing in publications like Exile Editions, Chatelaine, and Pulp Literature. She's the creator of the Brahma books, a speculative fiction poetry series featuring Brahma, a time-traveling locksmith. Renée Sarojini was Surrey's Poet Laureate, 2015 to 2018, and teaches creative writing at Douglas College. She's also co-hosts Lunch Poems at SFU, and you can learn more at her website, which we'll post somewhere online and in places. Thank you both for being here.
Thank you.
Yay! So, real quick, the Amplify program is a spoken word intensive, really looking at creating and understanding the power of bringing words from the page to the stage to performance in orality. And oftentimes that's sometimes short, but epic poetry is not short. It is full and awesome. And so I'm going to turn it over to these lovely humans to just tell us about your approach to epic poetry, what it means to you. Take it away, dear, dear poets.
Wow. Do you want to go first?
Well, we're both epic writers, so
Yeah.
epically, I think you should go first.
Haha. Well, I'm happy to. So I've been thinking about this a lot. Firstly, I am so honored to be seated next to you. It was really great to hear your formal bio. Thank you for being so welcoming to others into your practice. I think that's really amazing. And I'm very grateful to be part of what Johnny is doing at this house and with all of you and those of you who will be watching. So, Epic and me. For some reason, born in India, came to Canada as a little girl, settler citizen, lived all across these places known as Canada, different provinces. I've always been drawn as a creator, even before I knew I was a creator, to things that are long form, to series. I rarely write the occasional single poem, although I did do that as poet laureate for the city of Surrey. I was called to do it. That was always terrifying. And recently I wrote a poem about summer in terms of climate change that the wonderful Rob McClellan from Above Ground Press in Ottawa published. But that is a rarity. For some reason, I have been blessed or gifted by the universe, by the divine spirit, to see things in long form, in series, in triptychs, in sequences. That's just the way I roll. I'm really interested in balancing micro with macro, with myth, with saga, with long forms that take time, that are slow to read and slow to write. I actually think the oral and storytelling tradition of spoken word is absolutely the bedrock of epic writing. So that's my 2 bits. How about you?
Wow. I'm also very honored to be here with you. I heard Saklikar. I love that. I love your name.
Thank you.
Read. And I was struck by it. At the time, I was also writing this epic poem that just would not stop. And there I was with you, and you were reading, and the magic that you bring through your writing, and the sense of transformation, and your eye for beauty and detail and color and sound and sensation, and all of those sensations that we talk about within the 13th realm. I just love you. And at the time that I met you, I said, I want to spend the rest of my life with you. And I don't say that to everyone. I don't say that to anyone, but I meant it. And I want to know more about you. I want to know more about how you write and why you write, and what led you to write an epic. Because yes, we like the longer form because it opens up the story. But what spark went off that triggered you, that epiphanized you, that inspired you to just go into this? So what was it that made you go, I got to tell that story? And then you start telling it, and you realize that it's going into a trilogy. Because at a certain point, you kind of halfway through, you start going, oh, this is like longer than 300 pages. And then you phone your publisher and go,
Yes. And they go, ah.
Yeah, exactly. So what happened? Tell the story of that.
Okay. Well, firstly, though, I want to say I have a strong feeling of divination whenever I'm in your presence, and I feel we knew each other in another life. I feel that so strongly right now, this beautiful light in this home, in this moment, March 22nd, 2025. I feel we have known each other in another life.
Rings true.
Doesn't it? And I felt that powerfully when we first met as well. So there it is. Here we are. I'm moved to tears.
Here we are again.
And it's very interesting. This particular saga came to me close to here. I had arrived back from a trip back east. This was in the aughties. I was, following up on my first book, which was kind of putting me on the literary map of Canada, published in 2013, Children of Air India, about an immensely sad, traumatic, personal, public, historical event, the bombing of Air India Flight 182, killing everyone on board, trigger warnings all over the place, including my aunt and uncle who perished. And it's the 40th anniversary of that this year, in fact. So I was coming off a trip, a conference, And I was in a cab. I don't drive very much, although I have my license, and I didn't want to take transit. I was in a cab. And we were going by Marine Drive, where I noticed a series of oak trees. It was an unusually hot spring, and everything was withering and drying. This was well before the pandemic. And something just popped, I'm not kidding, and like a divination popped into my mind. The classic speculative fiction question, you might guess what it is. What would happen if the drought I'm seeing with these oak trees along Marine Drive, Oak Street, oak trees, what if they were to wither and die? And what if there was a really bad episode of drought? This was well before the pandemic. This is before cataclysmic wildfires. This is before all the things we're going through. And that was definitely a moment where I just started imagining everything around me in a futuristic way. And I didn't understand it was going to be epic fantasy. I didn't understand it was going to be multi-book. I was still dealing with the aftermath of publishing Children of Air India. And it just took me. And I just had to go with it in all the And so that was a 10-year process between that moment and publishing the first book in this series, which came out during the heart of the pandemic. And much thanks to BC's own Nightwood Editions, who took on this task and actually said, well, you've got to write it all. And it's actually a planned 8-volume set, but I honestly don't think I have that in me. I think I'm on book 4 right now. Book 3, and I think there'll be a book 4, and that might, just because I physically don't think I can do more than that.
It's a physical journey. It's a long physical journey. You don't know how physical it is, and it is heavy lifting.
It absolutely is. Can you just share a little bit about how the long poem in an epic form, multi-book form, found you?
Well, again, like you, unplanned, absolutely. I was invited as Poet Laureate of Calgary to write a poem. These, what are they called? My brain is somewhat dysfunctional most of the time, but today it's especially... because I'm in awe, maybe, and I'm listening, and I'm like, oh,
yeah,
me.
You're balancing and processing a lot of things. Was it like a form poem?
It was these precision oncologists. They were having this international meeting of these super brainiacs, and they were brainiacs, and they were coming together to Calgary, and they were precision oncologists, and they phone me and they say, will you write a poem about us?
Wow.
And I was like, no. Like, you're the smartest people on earth. What am I going to say to you? This is how smart you are, and I'm not sure I can achieve that in a week. And so I said, no, I can't possibly do such a thing. And then they mentioned they were going to pay me very well, and I was like,
oh.
We all have bills. And so I was like, well, I like the idea of the gig. There's this idea that I have been kind of thinking about for a long time, and it has to do with Asclepios, who is like the grandfather, the snakes up the Caduceus, and he's the grandfather of really medicine. He's the demigod son of Apollo, and his sister as well, Hygeia. And I was like, really, I wouldn't mind writing about dream healing, as Asclepios used to do, and maybe in this way your precision oncologist could learn something, because it's going to be quirky. And they were like, could it also be funny? And I was like,
up the ante.
Up the ante. Yeah. I was like, I could put one laugh line. And they, and so I started writing that, and then I wrote that, and then they took me up this tower, and then there were all these people, and their brains were breathing, and I was like a little bit overwhelmed by their brainiacness, and I was a little overwhelmed. I didn't really want to say my poem. They were too smart. But then their ears called me. And so I read the poem, and they were like that. And I was like, the brainiacs like it. Like, I'm like part of the club now. And so I had enjoyed writing it. And then I just went home and I continued writing for 6 years.
Yes, for 6 years.
like
So you literally got the call.
I got the call.
Right?
And that's what happens. And it's interesting that you should mention oak trees, because there's I do a lot of Celtic lore in the book as well. And one of the things that I talk about is the how the air changes as you enter an oak grove. The air, the atoms, the atmosphere actually changes. And as you enter, it actually changes your atoms. And you walk in, and there is an atmospheric and physical change that happens in oaks. So it's interesting that we have this, because, and the whole idea of you driving past these oaks, and suddenly, because even if you're driving past oaks, they have the ability to get to you if they want to.
Interesting. Oak is a huge symbolic force in my series. There's an old oak box that changes and heals and provokes. And that's sort of the dead wood of oak. But live oaks, flora and fauna, because it evolved into a climate change epic. But I didn't know any of this at the time.
Yeah, no,
this all came after.
Well, I had written the whole book. At that point, it was, I think, 400 pages or something. I had written the whole thing as a healing book. And it was all just healing. It was just one-sided. And then one morning, I woke up in bed from sleeping, and I was like, holy shit. I see the evil. And I'm never really, everybody was like, blah, 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 you have to write about the shadow, and I've always, blah, 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 no. And then suddenly I saw this whole totalitarian regime.
Interesting.
And the shadow, like, literally hit me in the morning. I had to rewrite the whole thing because I suddenly saw this whole epic totalitarian regime, and the character to heal has to get away from the totalitarian regime to this off the grid place where everything is about the earth and the trees and the animals and the sea and the sky and the senses. And the whole totalitarian, they had stopped everyone from feeling, from dreaming. And so I had to rewrite it. And the dystopia entered me. And it told me to go there. I truly didn't want to, because it's really hard to write dark.
It is. It takes a lot out of you.
Yeah. I like to read dark. Like, I love Lovecraft, and I love to read dark, but I've never really written dark like that. And then that's when the epic starts epically entering you, and you can't get away from it.
It's so true. It becomes addictive, and you have to take, like, I think all really intense creative work, you have to learn how to take self-care and look after the work as well. I find that really interesting about the shadow side, as Jung says, and the probing the dystopian, which a lot of epics do. Certainly mine does. And when we maybe read a little bit, you let me know when it's time to do maybe a little bit of reading, because I'd love to share a little bit and hear you share about how you've actually embodied that on the page. I'd love to. I was just taking a sneak peek, and yeah.
And it's interesting that we both go into the three.
Yeah.
And then after I met you, I started studying something else, and Brahma comes in, and I'm like, wow, Saklikar has gotten into me. Like, what are you?
Should I lay down some lines?
Lay down.
Okay.
Some.
Yeah. So I'm a little self-conscious. I had this mishap with my hand, and I realized that I'm self-conscious about my finger covering, which looks unnecessarily phallic, but I have to have this protective covering on it because it has sutures in it. But I realized that I emote and express myself so much with my hands. And so as I've been sitting here kind of trying to cover up my finger, it's like, it's just wrong. So I have to just be me. So I'm going to just read a sequence that I think touches on a lot of what amazing Sheri-D and amazing me, what we're doing as women taking on an epic form. So we're in book 2, and this dystopian reality that Sheri-D has introduced us, it's as if her book is speaking to my book. So I've excerpted from a 300-page novel in verse, which is just one book of the multi-book series. I've excerpted about 9 poems. There are shorter bits that are sewn together in a particular sequence. How do folks feel about my just reading? It'll be about 9 pages of poetry. It will feel long, and I'll just read it. How does that sound?
Yes. Yes.
And then I'll do that, and in the hopes that, then you will respond with your own lengths.
Oh, I'll do whatever you want.
Oh, well, this is my honor. Okay. So here we are. I'm just going to plop us in media res. It is the year, let me just be clear on the year so that you have that situated. This is the year 2087. And Brahma, the hero, a time-traveling locksmith, a demigoddess, is back on planet Earth, and Earth is ravaged by climate change and global inequality. Brahma is on a quest to find her people, including the little boy Raphael, last seen at the end of the first book. And this is part 2, where the evil dystopian global entity, the consortium, has actually fallen due to accelerated climate change. They're going to come back, but right now, even the evil consortium has fallen apart. And I'm going to give you a little flavor of what that looks like. And I don't know if you're feeling this way about what you are writing, because I don't know it as intimately as I should, and I'm really looking forward to it. But there is this kind of creepy feeling in what I'm writing, like I'm writing epic fantasy, and this is the year way forward from us. And yet it feels like my imagination is calling forth the dark side, and I wonder about that. Yeah. For you, right?
Yeah, there is that.
Yeah, where I look around what's happening in the world and I'm like, oh, this is all in my book, and I wrote about it. I've been writing about it for 10 years and now it's all coming to pass. It's very eerie. All right, here we go. Perilous equations inside perimeter, so on that outskirts area.
Yeah.
Everything happened much faster than planned. The dry, more severe and extreme, lasted decade by decade, wind-blown soil. Crops failed. Monthly meat feasts provoked long lineups. Supermarket parking lots staged raffles. Our mouths salivated, remembering. Injected butterball turkeys, rare steaks. Scrounging abandoned stores, we hoarded tins. These were the good old days compared to the dry when water cartels took over cities. Settlers drained too many lakes, drilled too deep. Concrete, tarmac, steel over marshes. Soon we were waiting days for 1 hour when the leaking pipes turned on. The water pressure was matched to income. Our levels low. The end of money. It were all about meat, plants, herbs, and cheese. Enough sticks and chopped wood. Big E rations. Grass to graze, grains to feed, cattle, goats, always looking out for mutated parts. Rustic revival, relearning old skills. When good with our hands meant enough to eat. We became hoarders of everything thrown, bartering for scraps. Wool, cotton, tin, plywood and plastic, shards of glass, steel gears, cutlery knives, scissors, and safety pins. One day we raided a department store, riches on every floor, and then we met old men and women who'd lived on the 6th, once were the realm of appliances sold. Songs of the Seed Savers' Rebellion. The honeysuckle and the rose, we sang. Drifters caught, unmasked, free trade zones shut down. For the good of all, we believed, skeptics yet driven by hunger to succeed. Go to the seeds when they are ready. Pick dry, save, find the space, store them well. Pluck, rub, shake, grab, cycle to season. Watch. Barter and hoard, trade and share will survive. Cycle to season, rub, safe seeds to arrive. Stories from the threshold. Under shade of a young pine tree we crept, forbidden to water and yet hauled pre-dawn under cover, smoky sky drift. Before time plastic buckets cracked, rag patched. We trekked for miles outside perimeter, forged transit papers lost, long expired, to stand before slender tree trunks, split bark, tiny plums misshapen, blue veins showing sparse growth, thin skin, leaves curled green, gray. We became shade hunters, breeze followers, water divined, water stolen from consortium tanks, water payments hoarded, body barters endured for the sake of capfuls, droplets saved from the last of the air-conditioned offices. Perimeter families sat down to lunch. Their sprinkler-fed lawns, lush, welcoming play, widescreen TV, indoor patio guards hired from the 5th gate, time cards twice stamped. After dessert, toddlers blew soap bubbles. Supply chains shrunken, though robust enough to plan the best getaway vacations. Booster shots for their arms, 6 months apart. Anyway, they employed many of us. Seed Savers' method as repeated for a generation. Ending so sudden and catastrophic, we didn't have time to select our seeds, grabbed, shoved into canvas, pods and kernels, storage obsessed. Mason jars always best. At the end of the spring portal, no rain, smoke-wreathed sun, or a killing matchless blue. Perimeter gardens withering, sparse ration cards meaningless, food depots scarce. Grandmother in her high meadow hideout, fingers on her beads, beeswax candles lit. She sent wordless messages to Brahma. She hung garlands of roasted milk thistle. She swept and swirled dry dust into glass jars. Field worker, she crumbled herbs into earth. Barefoot, bareheaded, she buried keys, locks, twofold petition to the sky gods, clear intent to plead for rain, to call Brahma home again, arms outstretched over soil barren of grain. And then the last two, I'll read part of the sequence. First the farmers, then the soil. Farmers, day laborers, truckers, care aid workers, a few nurses, no doctors left outside perimeter save those in chains. Against all odds, without access to and starving in the wet and in the dry, band gatherings held, everyone masked. They pleaded for supplies. Rogue bandits haggled hard, scarce resources, everyone willing, eager for their jab. Trouble was, no medicines to be had. Driven to soap and sunlight, our burns sting. One day we'll be famous for glass making. They created caucuses, committees, sit-ins, marches, parading. They filled streets, agitating for land. They wanted what they tilled. Harvest redistributed, fair portions, wages from the earth, reaped that they should keep. Grasses once thigh-high by now, farmers said. Once, they said, when oaks grew green. Roots warmed by a nurturing sun, rain-fed, winter, spring, summer, fall. Each followed the next. They said we were in balance. Plantings, harvests we could take and be safe. And then they said, our dominion over. The Great Hunger. Because of accelerated climate change, drought. Because of drought, then the floods. Then the fire. Because of the fire, famine. Because of the famine, food wars, riots, the soil blasted, blown. Because the soil gone, farmers killed themselves. Because the earth lost and the farmers dead, their daughters, seed savers. Because the seed savers, resistance. Because resistance, uprising. Jaldi, jaldi, hurry, hurry. Because the people, although famished. Because the people, bellies distended, bones bleached, seeds still saved. Because the seeds saved, uprising. Because we rose. Because we jaldi, jaldi, hurry, hurry. The fall of consortium, like that.
Wow. Wow. Trip. That's a trip.
So now you get what I mean about you. Do you have enough to keep going in books after books, writing this world and these characters? And
For me, the biggest question is, can I go back to writing one poem?
yes, talk to me about that. Can you?
I've been writing the odd one, which is, it just seems so easy now. It's sort of, I know it's so bizarre, but once you get into that that rhythm, and it is a rhythm that takes you through the story. It's this, and so it's like, wow, it's so weird when you do one poem and it's like 5 minutes long, and because your atoms have already changed. Your capacity of thought has already expanded, and your brain is already functioning outside of your body now. Like it's and also you have to spend so much time alone.
So much time.
And you then have to be in the company of people. And it's, I was never great in the first place at that, and now it's like I'm almost useless. I'm like, people, and I'm trying to have conversations, and I'm trying to be real.
Yeah.
And I've lived in these realms, and it's a very interesting, beautiful thing, and I think, well, I couldn't have done this when I was younger.
Oh,
I didn't have
this
the
is
capacity. I didn't have the length of time in my space brain, and I didn't have the focus to be able to remain in that space for like sometimes, well, mostly 7 or 8 hours a day. And so I couldn't have done it when I was young. There's also different aspects of it, like dialogue and story, and then the poetry itself. And so there's so many aspects that you learn along the way.
You do. It's a craft.
It's a craft.
And I also think spoken word, I hope our colleagues here today can feel it. I feel the mother root for me is the bardic oral tradition that sustains the epic.
Yeah, and it culturally is interesting, because in both our cultures there is that, and it's always been men.
Yeah.
And
the great heroes.
The great heroes
Of the epic. And the great writers. And here we are.
But it's mostly women now in this time who are taking on the epic. It's kind of weird in that way. And like, look at Anne Carson, look at Anne Waldman, look at you, look at these women who are taking on these big subjects and these big time frames.
Big time frames.
And so that's kind of an observation. And when I met you, and I was so thrilled by this, because you are a woman and you're dealing with spiritual matter, and you're dealing with matter and spirit in a way that is very copacetic with mine and with Anne Waldman. and her influence of Buddhism, your influence, I think of like Brahma,
Absolutely.
my influence of the Celtic religions and of
Greek myth.
Greek myth, but it's mostly about alchemy transformation. So, but
Do you want to read? Yeah,
I'll read
let's.
just a tad.
Please.
Just a tad. The oneironaut means oneiro in ancient Greek, to dream, and then naut, N-A-U-T, to journey. And I've used that concept of the oneironaut as a dream traveler. And it's a special kind of dream traveler that has different terms of engagement. So the terms of engagement of that dream traveler are various powers that go along with it. And my totalitarian regime is the Bureau, and within the Bureau is the DOD, which is the Department of Dreams. And they require all citizens to take a metanoia pill every day, which stops them from dreaming, and also keeps them in line and keeps them controllable within the algorithms of the controlled environment that they are living in. And so it's a repressive environment. And rain, I'll just, the epigraph goes, there is another world, but it is in this one, by Yeats. Backdrop. Deep in the forest, on a remote island, in a secret enclave far off the grid, a short circuit between the tips of two trees triggers an electrical arc, a la Tesla. The arc creates a red-hot helix dome, under which 7 women, known as the Willows, have gathered to circle, wearing long, white, hooded robes. It is not. The Willows teeter between extinction and supernatural forethought, between déjà vu and not yet imagined. They are not in liminality. In liminality, as they reach up into the night sky, their telekinesis jointly amplifies hive mind into a hum, a drone, a low, high buzz tone, spell casting. They focus their riveting power, wrangling the fiery current and all its tendrils adroitly into a single blazing sphere, one luminous star. The air cracks, quasi-sun afire. Rays shoot from their fingertips. The moon catkins. Astrologers guide the orb directly above them into a metacenter, a circle. An electromagnetic zombie ball hovers phenomenal above them. Amid the earth tremors, space stretches itself outside the visible universe, adding a dimension. In this suspension, a high-pitched whistle. Sound echoes. Sound echoes. Sound echoes. Shock waves waver. Gravitational time dilutes itself around, and growing galaxy clusters. A red shift impossible to tell if it's dragging or pushing. Fireball explodes subsonic in a slow motion. Boom. Fantastic. Simultaneously, far away An insight bomb goes off in Rain's brain, ignited by Shay of non-binary name. Incandescent welder sparks rain down on the willows as they continue to chant unfazed. Their revelation reverbs in a spacey prologue. Ra, ra, griendra. The willows speak crow in chorus, all of them together, all seven. The country has fallen into chaos under the razor thumb of brutal dictator Lester Maggot, head honcho of the Director of Dreams, DOD, or should we say the anti-dream regime, a machination hiding behind a sterile smokescreen of lies. Randyambria! By decree, there will be no reverie. Brenskara, Brenskara, Brenskara. That's the willows. They're the good guys.
I channel that.
They're speaking actually runes. So the runes are there. You can look up the runes language. It's there, and the sounds. They're actual sounds that go with those runes of transformation.
It's amazing, like sitting right beside you while you're doing that. It's like, wow, I can just feel all the vibrations.
Oh, maybe I'm too loud in the mic.
I don't know. It's good.
And then it goes on. So it's, us creating worlds. Tell me about creating worlds. Like, how do you step... Because the worlds unfold. Mm-hmm. They unfold, and suddenly you're living inside of them. Mm-hmm. And then you're creating them. And then sometimes you think, maybe I'm putting something on them. Yeah. So your world, your main world, let's talk about your main world. Uh-huh. So your main world is what you read to us.
Yeah.
So your main world has lost everything.
Yeah.
Very much like it has in Brahma's time.
In Brahma's time.
If you look at Brahma's time, the time of Brahma, like 1 second in Brahma time is like, what is it? Millions upon millions. It's a really interesting number anyway. Yeah. So in Brahma's time.
Yeah, and I think it's about the senses in the body. That's why I had such a powerful action to sitting beside you and feeling all the vibrations as you read that Celtic language. As a South Asian, I feel a kind of mystic link to all the world's epic powers. So when you read the sound of those runes, like I feel it just goes straight into my body. And I've always felt as an Indian, like I'm married to an Irish, and I feel a lot of connections to Irish Celtic and Celtic people in general. I feel like we have traveled the same path into Hindu mythology and Celtic mythology. They till a similar ground.
They till a very similar ground.
And women reclaiming that, like from the male druid to the female druid, and this feeling that I have very powerfully that I've met you before, like in another lifetime. So for me, the world building always starts with this question, what would happen if? And somehow I'm just gifted with an imagination that, for better, for worse, let me tell you, because it can be the site of a lot of anxiety. Like I'm always asking, well, what about if that happened? And what about if that happened? And what about if that happened? But then if it's just that, it became, you see the bookstores are filled with fantasy books, and it can become very prepackaged and very plastic. So for me, you asked a really interesting question, so I'll dovetail to that and then I'll come back to this about like where do these characters come from. I feel like you asked that question at some point in our conversation, and they kind of arrive. Oh yeah, you asked me about like how did I get started in all this, right? And I talked about the oak trees. The other thing that happened, and it's often when I'm transiting, because I'm a transit user, I was on the bus from UBC to where I live in East Vancouver, and I was traveling west to east. And, you see what you see in terms of socioeconomic changes from west to east on all kinds of levels. And the bus stopped outside a ramshackle old house by Fleming and 41st. And it had an old veranda. And on the veranda was a little horse statue. And I immediately thought, Bucephalus. That is a poor kid named Brahma. And they're living in a dystopian world. And they have a little iron horse that they name Bucephalus, not even knowing that that's the name of Alexander the Great's mystical horse, right? And so characters and objects and senses, once I've created the structure of the world building, they seem to arrive, and I've come to realize that's a sacred gift. Like, that happens to lots of creators, but not everybody. That the characters come to me. I don't chase the characters. And if I can allow enough space and authenticity to go where the senses are, which I felt you were doing very strongly. Like, I'd love to hear a bit more. Like, where do we go from that prologue? I'd like to hear just a bit more. That's where the world building comes from. If I do too much, and I can do this, when you're writing a multi-book series, you have good days and bad days. And sometimes I have to destroy or erase a whole bunch because it just doesn't feel true. It feels too, I'm putting it on rather than just accepting.
Mm-hmm. And I think it is coming from another place that I'm receiving it, and I'm the catcher of it.
Yes.
And I'm just what do you call it when we used to have those old scribes. I sort of feel like a scribe of.
You're taking dictation.
I'm just taking dictation, and I truly am. And so the characters speak. And I'm just like trying to get it down as fast as I can, and then sometimes I speak in other languages too. So I'm like, can we try to speak English to me, because but sometimes I put those other languages in, and so throughout it there are places where I fall off of this language, and I simply scribe what was sent to me.
Can you give us a little sample?
Those are just mostly sound things, and I use symbols in it.
I saw the symbols. Can you talk to us about the symbols as part of this process?
Well,
I use symbols too, and I thought, whoa, this is like, we've been tapping into the same mother mind, man.
I first started learning about symbols from Allen Ginsberg, because he talked about them a lot. And then if you went to his library and you just pulled out a book, there would be symbols written all the way through it. Like, he would just take his pencil or pen, and he would just go to his own books and write symbols in them. And they were generally symbols probably that he had come upon, so I started wondering, what do those symbols mean, when I was quite young, and started looking into symbols. And then symbols became a lot more important. And for me, they're like touchstones. So the symbols are touchstones, and they're real touchstones that represent some of the words. So some of the words, so everything in the book is real. Like it's called speculative, but actually everything is absolutely real. It's the words that are in it are ancient metaphysical words that represent different states of being and experimentation, or and then the symbols hold touchstones for the either emotions or ideas that are right there written beside them. So they're almost like they're symbols of what is actually happening. So you could read the book in symbols if you knew what those symbols, if we had a vocabulary to know what those symbols shared experience with those symbols. Anyway, so I've been working with symbols for a long time, and my interest also in Jung, and the symbology of Jung, and then the ancient symbols, and then the symbols of alchemy, and so there's a lot of alchemy in the book through the symbols, also through giving clues to people where they might want to experiment with mercury, salt, and other elements that may. Then there are other things, like there's the dream worlds and there's the visionary worlds, because Rain, as soon as she starts going down the path and she stops taking that pill, all hell breaks loose, because you can imagine if you suddenly start dreaming and you suddenly have these visions, and and even your memories will change, because the imagination is what's his name? Well, he talks about memory being, what is it? Memory, sensation, desire, and will.
Yes.
And Cicero. So is it Cicero? What the hell? My brain will not work. But
I like the list, though. And I mean, that's what I was saying, right? That is it memory? Is it a gift? Is it a divination? Like what?
That's what the imagination is. Yeah. And so, and as soon as that imagination, because our imaginations have been whitewashed, and we live in a world where our imaginations have gone, and with them our memory. Why are they losing their memory? Because they're afraid of dying. Because dying is living in the imagination, and the imagination, memory, desire, sensation, will, and I would probably add understanding.
Read us a little.
I'll just read you a little. I don't even know what to read. It's so hard to read.
Something about spells and magic, because I thought, well, I gave you so much dystopia.
I also have a lot about dreaming in here, and how to become, how to experiment with becoming a extreme lucid dreamer. And then,
maybe you should.
But I don't even know where to begin. I flip through here. I'm like, what the hell? I don't know. You flip through. Like, how do you tell people what this book is about? It's insanity. What is it? Like, this is insanity. Here, welcome to my insanity. Flip through it. See how it goes for you.
Okay, I got one.
Okay.
So maybe when I read this,
then it will
call for it.
Okay.
Because I thought, well, we've done so much of the dystopian and the language of the corporation and our reaction that we're already living and all of that. I loved what you were saying about oak and the vibration of oak. And then when you read the runic sounds, that really, as I've been saying, affected me. And I would love for you, I'll read this and see if you can find your correspondence about the magic, the alchemy, the salt and the mercury. And
okay.
I would love that. So this is in a sequence. There's a grandma. Brahma is adopted. She doesn't fully know her demigoddess status, and she has an adopted grandma who has taken her in at a very young age and is known as Miriam. And Miriam adopts seed savers and bands with resistors and seed savers, and is Brahma's adopted grandmother. And this is one of her poems, The Call to Thuja Placata, which of course is cedar. And this is in an imaginary settler universe called Pacifica. The Call to Thuja Placata. Scaly, blunt needles press pears tight to twig. Limbs sweeping downward, tapered trunk, fluted base. Spheres of female, small cones, separate from male. Dead branches in the crown, dense foliage. Long-lived, slow-growing, these trees we call the watch. Settlers, we knew their magic, not for us. Our language schemed ways to label, to take. Buds chewed for toothache, bark twigs infused, steamed. Boats, houses, shingle and shake, fence posts and rope threads. demarcation obsessed. We copied, stole, long strips, separate layers, bark to wood. Hauled water, boiled, sifted ash to soften dried filaments, pounded along the grain. Splinters pulled over ridges before rain. Small breezes carrying words echoing. Hollyhocks, daisies, snapdragons, and peas. These we once loved in the hidden valley. Cedar boughs underfoot, her knees earthbound, eyes closed, reciting, fingers on her thighs. Grandma said, settler and uninvited, I've seen things. Save my words for later when the wars come.
Whoa.
Wow.
That's gorgeous.
Wow.
Thank you for holding space to let me share.
I just really want to have a pajama party with you.
We're down there.
Just like we could just read to each other.
Read.
And we'll get
Hollyhock
Johnny to
stays
come
as
and
yes,
he can
please.
bring some like food and we'll all get together and we'll say
Some
things.
myths, more
Yeah,
myths,
and he
sagas.
has some great poems. and-
Yes. Hollyhocks, daisies, snapdragons, and peas. That's for you.
That's gorgeous. Hollyhocks. I love hollyhocks. I had hollyhocks in my last garden. I've just moved, so my garden is gone. And so I have to start again. Well, this is, I don't know. I've never read it. So what gives? A kaleidoscope of sky blue butterflies flutter erratic out of my chest, iridescent-ish blue butterflies beat from my heart. Butterflies, she had butterflies, her wedding day surrounded by vows. Gage's sister made strings of sky, butterflies, blue butterflies by hand, folded azure blue origami morphos, strung them along long strings. She hung them fluttering as a curtain all around the open temple where they got hitched. Butterflies, they had butterflies. They said their vows. Sky, blue, paper, butterflies quivered in the wind. They stirred, ping, went the strings. And blue butterflies trembled, azure wings lightly changed. They exchanged honey word whispers, and the wind played, and the strings, and the sitar azure blue guitar strings, sitar. Butterflies fluctuate, appear and disappear in a flash. Don't know where I am. They are seeing things. Whoa! Lapis lazuli blue butterflies fluttering out of the flower of me. Right now, my blue heart, millions of morphos. Should I stop drinking? Should I stop drinking tea? Whoa! Sip. Be.
Oh, magic.
The dreams are more Asclepios-y, and they usually have to do with entering the other realm in order to find a way to survive. And so they become more complex, whereas that's sort of simple because she's just having a little vision. She's beginning to have these, little visions before the real stuff kicks in, and then the DOD start chasing. So it's
And Rain. I love that this character's name is Rain.
Rain. And then the other thing, remember in the old drug days, if you were like phoning a drug dealer, you'd be like, hey, you got any clay salamander legs. And they'd be like, yeah, I've got 25 of them. And you'd be like, oh, I think I'd really like some clay salamander legs right now. And then they'd be like, okay. And then, so I decided that because I was like, I don't want to say the word dreams all the way through my book. It's just, so I decided to replace the word dreams with fish. And so whenever you see the word fish in or any variation of the word fish, it's a reference.
Code. It's
a
a code.
So there's a whole bunch of codes that come up. But I tell you in the book, like, don't say the word dream. Say the word fish. And so there's a whole bunch of codes that go through. So sometimes it goes into absurd writing unless you know the codes. And have observed the codes. It's sort of like, remember Johnny and Grec Le Grec when they had that poem about God that was called Cod?
I don't, but I like the sound of it.
So that was a reference. Sheri-D Grec and Johnny McCrae are dear poets, and they are the two dope boys in a Cadillac.
Okay.
And they do a lot of collaborative writing, and Johnny was here doing a workshop, and they were sharing videos of the work you're doing. Yeah.
I love it.
Cod. It was
Cod.
great.
It was one of my favorite.
Yeah.
It was one of my favorite of all time. You know?
Okay. Well, and what I really like about that, I think, the risk is, and I'm conscious of it, and that's why it's so important what both of you just shared, is not to get too pedantic, right? And not to get a bit pompous and, oh, I'm the serious poet bringing the epic dystopian. You want to have some joy. You want to have some playfulness, because it's so subversive and healing to laugh in the midst of tragedy. It gives you agency. So I love hearing that.
Yeah. And that in real life, that I did get to experience that wedding.
Oh.
And it was Rachna, a young another poet, and it was her wedding. And I'd never been to an East Indian wedding before. And it was Reggie Kabiko and I went as dates, and in Montreal, and there was 600 people there. And that's when I decided, because I've never been a big marriage person, and then and
seen all that ritual. You thought I want in on that.
Yeah, I became obsessed by it. I was like, oh, this is like, I would get married if I was East Indian. I would get married. I just don't want to do the church thing. And I really like this, and the rituals, the symbology,
Yeah.
and the rituals. And then
the food.
And then since then I've like married 600 people. Like I married people because I loved it so much, and I wanted to then pass that on, because it's open to interpretation, and it's open to the spiritual transitions, and watching and observing them. And so the blue butterflies was Rachna's wedding, actually, and it was mesmerizing, and watching her, and what a vow was, and the beauty of that. And so I wanted to put some of that, those real experiences that have happened in real life, and pretend that they're in their life. And
It becomes a container, right? The epic becomes a container.
right. And I think that's where you're really just writing about what you observe around you. And the characters are one of the most important things in an epic poem, I think.
I agree.
The characters.
They drive the story.
Yeah, they do. And through them, you can explore the eyes of what's happening in this world that we live in, that is very difficult and repressive.
Color. I loved in the butterfly poem, it was just saturated with evocations of blue and the repetition. So you were doing this incantation of color. I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah, color goes all the way through.
Yeah.
Because it's one of those writers, working with Belay, Nickerson, who we both are really good friends with, which is so weird that Belay didn't introduce us. I'm just saying, I don't know why Belay didn't introduce. He knew that we would fall in love with one another, and so I was like, well, Billy, why didn't you introduce us?
Yeah.
And he was like, maybe he's like on a Seinfeld show and he just like doesn't want to mix his friends.
And you've got this blue. Tell us about the cover of the book.
So
Hold it up and show it, 'cause I
the
think it's-
blue, well, the color is very, very important.
Yes.
And that's when he was reading the text, and he gave me a lot of feedback on the text. And, you know, it was edited by Micheline Mailer, and Belay gave me a lot of feedback. And he was very accurate when he said, it's really important for writers to observe their own writing on how they write. What are the words that they repeat? What are the rhythms? One of the things that comes up a lot for me is the colors. Everything, and some people it's scent, and some people and what are the ones that trigger you? So what are the ones that trigger?
Well, oak is a big deal. Oak comes up a lot.
And flora and fauna.
Yeah,
I know.
gold, the elements, stone, gold, bronze, iron, jewels. Yeah, there's just a whole list. I'm thinking for book 3, because there's a glossary of characters, of place names, and I'm thinking of doing objects as well. The object really holds me. There's a necklace of power in the 3rd book, and all the objects. There's a necklace here. They're from mainly my Hindu side of the family. Like I have Muslim, Hindu, and Christian all roped together in 3 in my life. And so I put some of that right in the book, just like you're doing, just like what you've just said. I love that.
Isn't that something? And the sitar, I didn't even know that the sitar was going to be in that part that I was like, because I love the sitar, because it is the spider, right?
It is the spider.
And there's a spider that comes up. So the sitar is like foreshadowing.
Yes, and you're doing. I love your voices. Oh my God! So you fully embody the different character voices.
I do.
And I love that. It gives me so much validation and permission as a literary writer to learn from spoken word artists that it's okay to do that, because it can become so taboo in the literary world. So this is the real life necklace gifted to me by my now very dead auntie. Who is a devout Hindu, and that is the goddess Kali with a Sanskrit inscription. And so this wonderful local artist from Gibson's, Nadina Tandy, she reinterpreted it for one of the characters that I didn't get into today. She's a warrior priestess who comes to a very bad end because she takes up the sword of Kali, and you know what happens when you take up the sword. Yep. So, and this is her rendering of a Sanskrit inscription that's on this necklace box.
And do you study Sanskrit?
No, I absolutely don't, but I dabble.
Yeah, I dabble. I
want to dabble with
dabble
you.
in those realms. We're just going to have to get together at our pajama party with a book, a translation book of. I've been looking at the Sanskrit because the language itself is a spirit.
It is.
It's
alive.
It's
It's a dead language. It's an alive dead language.
It's an alive dead language.
But I think there are myths that, to inscribe the Sanskrit. I think in the Kabbalah, in the Jewish faith as well, like there's certain words you don't say, you don't spell, because the very act of creating the inscription is a very powerful, and
you have to be careful.
You have to be careful.
You do not, in those realms, just to say, anyone who's observing this or listening right now, there is a warning that was given to me by my teachers.
Tell us.
That is, you do not go into territories that you, be careful where you go into. And so you be careful.
Yeah, with
and
respect.
you be mindful.
Mindful.
You just be mindful, and you do your work and your due diligence, and don't just go running in.
Yeah, it's not random.
It's not random.
And I think this idea of writing the epic as an apprenticeship, you talk about 6 years. I suspect, Sheri-D, it was longer and is longer, because now you're coming out with book 2. Oh, yeah. Tell us about book 2.
It's coming.
Yay.
It's coming out in 3 weeks. And it's called NAUT 2. This is NAUT 1. There's NAUT 2, and then there's going to be NAUT 3.
I love it.
And I think, like you, it's weird when you said 4. I was like, Well, because I think there might be a fourth. But it's going to be like an afterthought.
A coda, maybe.
Yeah, like a coda.
So we need to do a book launch together for one of these. We need to do something together. We need
Okay,
to
what
do a
about
reading.
3?
Yeah.
Because 3 is the and that would be interesting.
Yeah, well, we'll plan.
All right.
I probably need some tea now.
Okay. I think that we're wrapping it up. That's what we're saying.
Yeah, what a magical afternoon.
It was like, ew. Hey, just wait. Before, let's take quick questions. 3 quick questions.
Can we see the cover of your book? Can we
Oh.
describe if it's
Yeah, sorry.
okay?
A
And
necklace.
book 1 is also by the same Gibson's artist, Nadina Tandy. And, you know, it really does take a village to do these independent publishing. So this is brought out by Nightwood Editions. The book is carefully designed as a series. It has its own logo stamp, its own color mythology by Top Shelf Creative. Also in Gibson's, and Nightwood is at Madeira Park on the Sunshine Coast, and Nadina Tandy is the artist. And I'm very deeply grateful and honored to be collaborating with all these local people to create this work. Show
And this
your
is
book.
done by Henry Yee. And he's in New York.
Oh,
And he's a very famous fella. and Brad Morton from Right Bloody North was looking for a cover maker, and his name was suggested, but he was really famous, so we were thinking he wasn't going to go along with this ploy, this idea we had. And then Brad Morton sent him my book, and he loved it, and he did this.
congratulations. It's
And
stunning.
It's an actual picture of one of the scenes in the book. It's this guy, Henry. I love Henry. And Henry did number 2 as well, and Henry's going to do number 3 as well. And I don't know, he usually does famous people, but he liked
You're a famous
he liked the
person.
idea. And this one also has this, you see, it's weird, because you have this,
Yeah,
and this is the
A
Right
symbol?
Bloody North weird thing
Oh, I
that
love
I
it.
don't understand.
I love it. Symbols.
Yeah,
Lots of symbols. And we both use chevrons in our books.
That's the other thing I noticed,
Yeah.
that you had the
Yeah.
And
Hexagons.
yeah.
Bees. That's another thing I forgot to mention. Yeah, bees are a big deal.
I have a bee wine in mine.
Yeah.
190 proof.
Maybe we need a sip or two.
Well, this was the easiest panel I've ever done. And just enjoying and holding the space and being in the presence of it. So for those who are interested, NAUT 2 is launching specifically on Tuesday, April 15th. It's part of Versus Festival of Words, and that's happening at Chill XU's in Mount Pleasant. And so, yeah, please come check that out. The festival is happening from April 10th to 20th, and we're so honored that Sheri-D is one of our headline, just legendary poets coming to
Yeah.
grace and share her book with us. So thanks for that. Are there questions from the cohort here? Yes, go for it, Katya.
You talked about writing dark, and I'm wondering, like, what kind of parameters or process you have to, like, carry you through that process. Because you have to.
That's a good one. And it's an important one. And the, because again, when you go into the dark, it's important to protect yourself.
Yeah.
And I generally write the dark, and then I follow it by something healing. And I also wrote this piece a long time ago about stones, the stone speaking. And it's a healing piece, and I continually return to that, and I just say it out loud to myself.
Oh, that's lovely.
And I think that it's good for poets to have that poem that they write for themselves to heal, and also feel free to cry.
It's so beautiful to turn to the work that helps heal. And I'm like, my Hindu grandma has just taught me, like, hydrate, move, do yoga, go for a walk, be in nature, wherever you can find it, because sometimes we're not blessed with access to beauty. But just find that blade of grass, or you know, a scent of cinnamon, or the color red, or whatever color moves and heals you. Go to the ocean. I just think connecting to nature and moving the body, because if you're sitting, going into the dark as a creator of words, and there's just a lot of sitting, move the body and hydrate.
That's
I know, it's so practical, so simple.
an ocean is good because of the
Ocean.
ions. Yeah.
Yeah, and the
Negative
mother-
ions.
and then a grove of oak trees.
Oak trees.
Yeah. Go up to Central Park, if you can't get to Stanley Park or wherever, you can find trees.
And
Trees are so
cedars
good.
are excellent.
Yep.
It's very
And cry.
Yeah.
I would
Salt.
just find myself, yeah, salt is the thing. That's part of it. Is like cry. And cry from every pore of your body instead of from your eyes. Like let your body cry. And go, if you're in the forest, you can body cry. They say, you know, bathing, forest bathing. Well, I do body crying
Oh,
in the forest for sure.
You lie down on the grass.
I do.
Yeah,
I find moss. And sometimes if I'm alone or with Willow, I even take off all my clothes because it's, you know, a weekday. Nobody's there. I do
I
body.
do not do that.
She does not.
But I love that she does.
I do.
I love
Because,
that
you know,
do that.
it appeals to me on other levels. But it does help the earth on your body.
It's true. And, you know, as I say that, because, you know, I'm a little middle class and I'm like, oh, yeah, no, I wouldn't do that. But what I do, so there's another thing. Definitely, if I've written, like, I kill off my characters, not that I want to, but they just come to tragic ends because life is so tough, as we know. Barefoot on grass and earth, like get your feet on the ground, on Mother Earth. So that's really what you're saying.
Yeah.
I'm just doing a more sedate version of Wild Child here.
But it's true. Earth, feet, the soles of your feet. Yeah.
We were just talking about that today in our workshop. One of my early memories of Sheri-D was she was sharing, she went to some really dark places in some work, and the room was with her. But that's part of the nature of, I think, orality of like, I'm sonically sending this to you and we're resonating together.
Yeah.
And so as soon as it was done, she's like, okay, everybody, we're going to the park. Let's go. And so here comes Sheri-D with a herd of poets just weeping, walking into the park by the ocean. And it was like the coolest thing.
That is so beautiful. Thank you for sharing. What a poem you've just shared.
Well, yeah, this came from here. But something I wanted to ask was, it was interesting that you're both speaking so much about hydration and care, because a theme that's come up in Amplify, probably, you know, in concert, in harmony with that, is
Yeah, speaking
is,
of, thank you.
vibration. And you both spoken so much about accessing it, and, you know, one needs water to, or anything that's, you know, resonant in there. So I have a question as we wrap up around endurance.
Oh.
And also around, I think for a lot of us who write the 3-minute poem or the 5-pager or the whatnot, it's like these moments of spurs would come in, like, oh, it's here. I had to wake up from a dream and write this thing down, and then edit it, and then perform it tomorrow night or whatever. Beyond the self-care and hydration, are there technical practices, metaphysical practices that you engage with, so that when you are able to say, it's been 8 hours, I'm a little bit now, and I'll come back tomorrow, and then allow that resonance to come back to you know, return.
What a great question. It's a key question. Did you want to share?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not really great at it. I just, I'm kind of lousy at that aspect because I forget time, and then I realize I can't walk.
Yeah.
Like I can't walk, and my leg won't work, and I have been sitting there too long, and my leg won't work.
Yeah.
And then I realize that my back will not move, and it's a real thing. It's a real thing.
It is.
And water is the thing that I do. Thank gosh that I drink the water but it's important to remember to move. So then I started setting an alarm that goes off. And I also have these bowls that make these resonant sounds that can go through your body.
Oh.
And you can just play them. And I do use those.
Oh, this is wonderful to know.
They open certain aspects of you, and they help you to, they take some of it, because sometimes I walk the dog, I drink the water, I can't move. Mary knows this because she has to come over to my house and unfold me. It's like, and she's, move your leg. No, really, and it's really, and as you get older, you actually forget. Yes. But anyway, the bowls, get those bowls, find out what the key of the bowl is and the note of the bowl, and find out what aspect it's going to help you with in your body. And it could be an organ, or it could be a chakra, it could be the hidden chakras, it could be all these things. And then I do play those.
Oh, I love
and
it.
And Willow likes them. Oh. And so that is helpful, and meditation is helpful. But these days I don't meditate sitting, because I sit so much.
Yeah, that would lead you back into the same problem.
The same problem. And what about you?
Well, I don't do bowls, but I'm really paying attention. I love this word you've been using about the resonance. And then also, I thought this was such an important question embedded in it was, you can do it the 8 hours, but then how do you go back and do that again and again and again? So my first thing is I rarely do 8 hours. So for me, it's more like if I'm going deep, as I sometimes have to with this, it's smaller, disciplined practice points. So I try and create little schedules, and sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. But I always leave something on the page to come back to. And I have a standing desk that moves up and down, so I alternate between standing and sitting. I don't just sit. I don't do 8 hours. I do up to 4 max, with lots of little breaks, lots of tea. I have a lot of little tea rituals. And so it's just a little bit of this, a little bit of that, but always moving forward in having some goals, having some structure, having a practice. So I have to, right? Like in order to sustain this. And some days are better than others. Being gentle, in the end, radical compassion, and praying a lot, honestly, praying and self-journaling. For book 3, I've been writing so much like, please give me strength that I can finish book 3. It's not getting easier. It gets harder and harder. The world is getting harder and harder.
Yeah. And also the ideas, so you edit it, you write, I've written the whole thing, so the whole thing is written, and then I edited it in little bits, but then as I'm editing it, I'm rewriting it, and I'm adding shit, and then I'm like, oh fuck, what? And then I had this reader, she was like, what happened to the hubcap?
It's plot gap, and then you have to deal with all the plot gaps.
Oh my god, just thinking about it, my neck, ow, the hubcap. And I was like, oh, Leisha, the fucking hubcap. But it's a real thing. It has to go through the next book. And I completely forgot the hubcap. And I'm telling you, things, that's what happens. You see what I mean? Your body is holding the hubcap. And so Leisha was like, I was reading the opening of like book NAUT 2, and I'm like, what happened to the hubcap? And I was like, what hubcap? And she was like, the hubcap that's at the end of book 1, and it's really an important plot point turning. And I was like, oh, what page would that be on? And she was like, here it is. And she's worked with me for years. And I was like, oh. She was, but that's what I mean. You're writing, stuff comes up, you're putting it in there, you totally forget. It was like, yeah, that was cool. La, 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 la. You move on, and then
I have different colored notebooks.
Yeah, I have different color notebooks.
Keeping track, it can cause a lot of anxiety, saving, having external hard drives. But all of that, honestly, I think it comes down to a kind of radical tea, water, movement, and radical compassion. Some days are better than others, and just accepting that your practice will be imperfect and you keep going somehow.
Yeah,
Thanks for that.
that's very true.
I think that, and I'll add a third thing to it because I can do that since I'm
Do it.
here
Do
in
it.
this role, is that, you know, a lot of the Amplify cohort today, we're so grateful to you because you took 4 days of your life and your time to come and be here and understand that practice and is a struggle, and practice takes work and time, but it's also about listening. We talk a lot about, in my own practice, I talk a lot about, you know, how we give voice to folks and how we sometimes either intentionally or inadvertently take voice when we don't need to. You know, I think that a lot of my work is around, you know, as a producer, as an organizer, is, you know, it's not about me giving voice to the voiceless, though that's a very important statement that was framed in a certain time. I think for us, it's about getting folks to listen. Because the people who have been silenced have been speaking and still speaking, like the Sanskrit and beyond. And so it's the third thing about that is to come and listen. And we've had two and amazing folks. So, as is my way, you can get Brahma's Quest from Night with books from Renée Sarojini Saklikar, and you can get The Onaironaut from Right Bloody North, and that is with Sheri-D Wilson. Thank you so much for this incredible day.
No,
Please
thank
stick
you.
around for some tea, and for those watching, watch the next episode. Okay. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Later, agitator. In a while, bibliophile.